Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Lunch and Learn today. My name is Sarah Scholl. I am the Outreach and Public Relations Coordinator for the Pennsylvania Parks and Forest Foundation. Today, we are talking about the practice of leave no trace when we're out in our parks and forests. And with us today is Monika Baumgart and David LeMay from the National Leave No Trace organization, and Rachael, Mahoney, educator at Forbes State Forest here in Pennsylvania. Welcome to you, everyone.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
Sorry, I had you on mute. My bad. So, all right, so let's get started. And I think the best way to do that is kind of go around. And why doesn't everyone share a little bit about their current positions and an overview of the type of work you do, just so people can get a better understanding of your expertise here on the subject. So Monika and David, why don't we start with you?
Awesome. Yeah. So my name is Monika.
I'm David. So we are one of the Subaru Leave No Trace teams. We are one of 4 teams that travel all over the country offering free education on the best ways that we can minimize our impacts in our daily lives. When we are on the road, we usually camp everywhere that we go. We live out of our car full time. And we just travel all over the place offering workshops, trainer courses, which can be up to 2 days, where we work with a group doing, it's like a 16-hour training over the course of 2 days. And then we also provide outreach also at trailheads and at festivals and other places where we're invited to go and speak to the public.
And Leave No Trace is a national nonprofit. We've been around for over 25 years offering this free education, and all of the education that we provide is rooted in research. So we partner with lots of different universities to conduct research to understand the best ways that we can minimize our impacts in our daily lives. Yeah.
And Rachael, why don't you tell us a little bit about your position at Forbes State Forest there?
Sure, yeah. So I'm Rachael Mahoney. I am the Environmental Education Specialist at Forbes State Forest. So a lot of what I do is working with the public. It can be anything from outdoor recreation education to more formal education, but I do anything from environmental education to interpretation. I work with a lot of different groups of people. Right now with the COVID, we're a little limited on what we're able to do, but we're definitely trying to modify a lot of our traditional practices to be able to still reach out to the public and make those connections. So I work a lot with coordinating volunteer groups as well. Essentially, my position is not only an educator, but also that of a recreation forester. So I do a lot with helping to manage and work with different groups to help take care of our various resources that we have throughout the state forest, whether it be trails or other things of the like. So we're pretty busy with that, figuring out modifications of how to get people involved right now, and definitely trying to get that message of Leave No Trace out to visitors, volunteers, and other individuals right now.
Great, wonderful. So this is an open-ended question for anyone to kind of add their 2 cents to. What is Leave No Trace as a concept, as a practice?
I'll let the experts take that away.
Well, that actually is a question that we start off with normally in our workshop. So I'm very intrigued, and we will answer. But what comes to mind for you all when you hear the words Leave No Trace? Like, what are the first things that you both think of?
I mean, I think it's kind of right there. Like, I visited a place, but no one would have ever known. I didn't leave any evidence of my being there.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think of the 7 principles of Leave No Trace.
Yeah.
That are very important, which are essentially manners for the outdoors.
Exactly. Y'all are both right. So we essentially say that Leave No Trace is a framework for making good decisions outside. So that totally encapsulates both of what you just said. And exactly what we have is the 7 principles, and those have been found through our research of the best ways that we can minimize our impacts outside. And it's really important to acknowledge that they are in no way rules, just guidelines, different ways that we can use our own internal outdoor ethic compass that we learn through researching and reading to really guide us in using those principles, those guidelines to, in every single situation, figure out how we can best minimize our impacts. So Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, if you wouldn't mind, tell us a little bit about Leave No Trace, the organization. You mentioned you've been around about 25 years. So can you tell us a little bit more about your history and sort of what inspired the beginning of the organization?
Yeah, I can take that one. Yeah, so Leave No Trace, the concept goes back over 50 years ago to the passage of the Wilderness Act, when there was an influx in visitors going into backcountry spaces, and there weren't any sort of guidelines on the best ways to minimize our impacts when we were out there. So the U.S. Forest Service and the national parks and the U.S. Wilderness came up with these guidelines to best minimize impacts, and that slowly grew into the Leave No Trace program with the Forest Service in the 80s. And throughout this whole time, it was solely funded through the U.S. government, so tax funded. And in the early 90s, they deemed that it would be really important if it became its own nonprofit, so that we wouldn't have to rely solely on tax funds, and then we could grow into the organization that we are today. So we just celebrated our 25th anniversary last year. And since then, we've been able to partner with, as Monika said, a bunch of different universities and groups to perform different studies and researches so that we can come up with the best practices. And
we have over 35,000 partners and volunteers on the ground sharing this education all over the country. So yeah, definitely. And it's broadening into other countries as well.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. So Rachael, what sort of impact are we seeing in our state forests right now?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I'm sure that you've probably heard about a lot of the impacts due to the high influx of visitation that we've had, not only in southwestern Pennsylvania, but across the state. A lot of people, I feel like, constantly they think of the state parks because they have the amenities available. They manage their lands a little bit differently. So when they think of high visitation, they automatically think of state parks, but it is important to think about state forests as well and some of our other public lands that we have within our state and how heavy visitation is affecting them. So, we're seeing a lot of things happening currently. And I think that a lot of people do have some more free time right now. People are exploring other activities that they otherwise wouldn't due to gyms and other facilities being closed, which is great. We really encourage people to seek outdoor recreation opportunities for peace, for well-being, both mental and physical. So we're really embracing this change right now, and we're trying to figure out how to sustainably manage and keep up with the demands of visitors. So a lot of what we're seeing right now is unfortunately some of the negative aspects of high visitation, high volume of people coming to state forests, to public lands. And I think that one of the biggest things that we are facing right now is vandalism and littering, which we have dealt with in the past, but currently is something that has gotten a little out of control. And on top of that, we are seeing a lot of novices, again, people that might not have the outdoor experiences, they might not have the knowledge, and we are seeing an increase in search and rescues. And in most instances, what we are experiencing is not family members or friends contacting us to say that so-and-so is missing, but rather it's the person that's out recreating and calling and saying, hey, I don't know where I am along this trail. So all across the board, we're dealing with different visitors, different groups, and figuring out how we can get a message across. So Leave No Trace is really perfect for that because we can go through the different principles and tie that into a lot of what we are experiencing. Planning ahead and preparing would be a great start for a lot of people. And just understanding how to conduct yourself when you are outside. Again, it's not rules, it's suggestions. How you can leave the place that you visited better than how you found it.
Great. Let's dive into it, shall we? So if you wouldn't mind, educate us all. Let's begin. Number one.
Sure, yeah. So what we can actually do here is we actually have a mnemonic hand device to help memorize the principles. So if y'all are willing, we'd love for you to join us. And I'll go through them twice. So the first time I'll explain each one, but then the second time we can go ahead and just say them together. How does that feel?
Perfect.
Awesome. Okay, so here we go. So number one is plan ahead and prepare, as Rachel was saying. So you're researching about the place, you're learning if it's even open, if it isn't open, what's another place that you can go? If it's going to be really crowded, what are times that you can go that it won't be as crowded? Because that's when we're seeing that really high use. And thinking about times of the week and day that you're going to be expecting to see less visitors, or if there's an area that you know that doesn't get as many visitors. Also looking up, researching about if bathrooms are even open in the area, because that's especially important, something that we're seeing a lot right now. And then you're writing it down, you're researching, including, learning if campfires are allowed, if dogs can be off leash, what your group's needs and expectations are. All right, number 2 is travel and camp on durable surfaces. So this is all about being really aware, even if we're just going out for a day hike, making sure that we're sticking to the trail, even if it is a really high use area, that we're not going far off the trail. I mean, really at this point for physical distancing, it is important to be aware if you can't get 6 feet away from somebody unless you get off the trail, definitely put your safety first. That's important. But if you are stepping off the trail, finding the most durable surfaces such as rock versus some wildflowers, right? And then same goes for camping. Number 3, dispose of waste properly. So this is all about that trash that you're seeing, making sure that it goes back to planning ahead and preparing, really thinking about ensuring that you have something that you can pack out your trash with. We always have a dirt bag that we can pack out our trash with, but just being really prepared, maybe packaging your food ahead of time. And then this goes back to waste, which we have a whole thing to talk about for poop. So maybe we'll wait on that one.
Well, I have poop questions.
So we'll dive back to poop in a little bit, but for the sake of the principles, we'll keep going. Number 4, you take a photo and you leave what you find. So this is all about being really conscious about when you take something out of the ecosystem, you can affect the natural functioning of that ecosystem. So things like rocks and picking flowers, and if you break trees, just really doing everything you can to ensure that you're keeping things in that ecosystem so that it can process naturally.
Yeah, and then other people can enjoy it as well.
Exactly, yes. 5 is minimize campfire impacts. So this is really important. Leave no traces. In no way anti-campfire. We're just all about having responsible campfires. 6 is respect wildlife. So doing what you can to make sure that you're giving them safe distance, so that you're watching them from a safe distance. They might get closer to you than you will get to them. We have a fun little trick for that we can dive more into too if we have time. And storing your trash and food securely. And then 7, be considerate of other visitors. So being kind, giving people the benefit of the doubt, really acknowledging where we are at right now as a society, especially with everything that is going on, acknowledging that Black Americans face unjust violence and danger in the outdoors, and we really need to be aware of that and bringing that into our recreation and thinking about how we can have those conversations and how we can make the outdoors a place that is truly for everybody. So just taking that time, if you see somebody that's doing something that's not so leave no trace, taking the time to have that conversation with them instead of saying, hey, that's against the rules, or you wagging their finger, just really taking the time to explain what's happening and those natural processes that are taking place within the ecosystem. So that was really quick. I hope that wasn't too quick, but do y'all feel like you could do the hand signs with us together here?
I'm definitely ready to try.
Here we go. 1,
Plan
ahead and prepare. 2, travel and camp on durable surfaces. Nice. 3, dispose of waste properly. 9, 4, leave what you find. 5, minimize campfire impacts. 6, respect wildlife. And 7, be considerate of other visitors. Amazing. Nice job. I hope that didn't feel like too much.
I got it.
It was perfect.
Down pat. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, Rachel, let's turn it back to you. So I know that with COVID-19 and all these sort of changes, everything came along quickly. So how how is Forbes?
I'm sorry, could you please repeat that?
I think she's getting her pup.
That was me. That was me a few minutes ago. It was perfect. I couldn't mute it.
Delivery is here, so sorry for that. But how is your state forest combating this impact? What plans do you have in place? Is it as simple as more trash cans? What sort of actions do you have in place to combat this overuse and misuse that we're seeing?
Sure, that's a really great question. So just to give you a little bit of a background about our state forest system, again, a lot of people have the mindset that as soon as you go in the outdoors, all of these amenities will be available to you. There will be trash cans, there will be restroom facilities. That is not the case necessarily on state forest land in Pennsylvania. We manage for low density recreation, and we have our forest is in more of a primitive setting. So as far as staff contact, it's going to be limited regardless of COVID-19. Now it's going to be even more limited than it has been in the past in some places. We're doing our best with that currently. But you should definitely, if you are planning on going out to a state forest, plan ahead again and understand that we don't have these facilities. Again, we're getting a lot of novices and people that don't necessarily have the experience, and that's totally fine. We want to encourage people to come out. We want people to understand too that a state forest manages land differently than a state park, and that some of those creature comforts aren't going to be available. So what we're doing is implementing, having our maintenance staff come out and take care of restroom facilities. We don't have a lot of them, but they are doing extra cleaning. Once a day they're going out and making sure that there are trash cans, there are bags available inside of those facilities for individuals to dispose of their waste properly, as well as just having a clean setting for individuals to go to. We are having some of our staff returning to work, which is super exciting. So we're actually able to have a few more folks out on the ground to assist with the public. And then on top of that, our office is modifying its openings as well. It was about 2 weeks ago or so whenever we moved, I believe, into the yellow in southwestern Pennsylvania. Now we're in the green as of today. That doesn't mean a lot of changes for us necessarily from yellow to green, but we're still taking the public safety and health in mind and making that the utmost priority for us. So if you do need to come into the office or you need to talk to someone, unfortunately, you can't physically come into the office, but we do have staff available to chat with at a window that you can get your permits, you can ask questions. So that's another point of contact to get more knowledge about what to expect before going out to the state forest. And of course, encourage people, if you're visiting a new area, maybe you're unfamiliar with Forbes State Forest, give us a call. We're open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Unfortunately, we do not have staff that mans the office on weekend hours. So if you try to call, we're not going to be able to get in touch with you. So please just call us during those hours and we'll do our best to get you as much information as we can, because we want your experience with us on our land to be exciting. We want it to be memorable. We want it to be safe. And assuring that you have all of the tools that you need is definitely going to make us feel better, and I'm sure make you guys feel better as well. So we're really trying to include more of our staff in just getting people involved, making public contact. Our ranger staff is doing its very best to make public contact with people, educate people about, different things that they can do to have these better experiences. And if they see people doing things that they necessarily shouldn't be doing, doing their best to try to explain to them why, that's frowned upon. So there's a lot going on, and things are constantly changing for us. So we appreciate everyone's patience as we navigate these really interesting times.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we talked a little bit about how we're getting new visitors, people who might not have been to a park or forest before. So let's talk a little bit about step one, planning and preparing. So how do I do that if I'm visiting a forest for the first time? Where should I go? What resources are available to me?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. Definitely do your research ahead of time. And I encourage that no matter where you visit, if it's somewhere that you're unfamiliar with, even somewhere you're familiar with, but maybe you're trying out a new trail, always plan ahead. So look up maps online, do your research, know where you're going is extremely important. That way you have a plan and outline that you can provide with other individuals, whether they live in your household, if they're not coming along with you, a parent, a friend, to let them know when you plan on leaving and when you plan on getting back. That will avoid any sort of search and rescue scenario, hopefully, and at least provide people with more information. The more knowledge that people have, the better. So knowing where you're going, extremely important. And unfortunately, a lot of the searches that we do get are people that don't have a map with them. They haven't charted out a path. They just go out there because they want to spend some time in nature, and next thing they know, they're turned around, they don't know which direction they're heading. I'd also recommend that if you are new to hiking or the outdoors, to take a basic map and compass class. Something that allows you to orient yourself with where you are in the outdoors can be extremely helpful. A couple of cases that we have had of searches are people that didn't know their cardinal directions, north, south, east, west. So something as simple as just taking a basic course, which a lot of state parks and state forests do offer, as well as other organizations, can be extremely beneficial if you were to get turned around a little bit while you are out on the trail. So really just knowing where you're going is such an essential, such a crucial first step that unfortunately has been overlooked a lot recently. So bring a map.
That's great. That's great. And for folks that might want to explore the 7 principles, Leave No Trace principles, you can visit at the link there to dig into them a little more. Awesome. So, okay, it's time. We're out on the trail. We got our bodies moving. Uh-oh, our bowels are moving too. What do we do when we gotta go number 2 or even number 1 out on the trail, far away from any facilities?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
I'll let you guys tackle this first, and then I'll chime in.
Very good.
Well, first of all, are cat holes allowed in the area that we're talking about?
Yes. Yep, we just have different rules and regs. We just advise that if you do need to go to the bathroom, do it at least 100 feet away from a water source and far enough away from a trail and from a parking lot. So obviously that you're out of sight and that we don't really have to worry about people trampling through. But yeah, we do highly recommend that people do that. Yeah.
So let's dig into it.
Yeah. So what we recommend doing, so this is something that's great to have no matter what kind of outdoor adventure you're going on. But especially right now, just considering that there are going to be some places where bathroom facilities might not be open. So you might not even be too far into your journey and just already have to go because the bathrooms aren't there. So we have right here, we have a poop kit that we bring with us even on a day hike. So in here, we open it up. We have our trowel that we would use to go ahead and dig a 6 to 8 inch cat hole. So in places where it is allowed, which it's allowed in the state forest, you can go ahead and dig a 6 to 8 inch cat hole. And why we recommend 6 to 8 inches is that is the perfect depth where there seems to be the most where there's the most beneficial microbes to help break down solid waste. If it's shallower than that, in a rain event, it could wash away or it could dry out, or maybe an animal might smell it and want to dig it up. And if you go any deeper than that, you might start getting into that mineral soil, and that is actually going to take longer for it to break. That 6 to 8 inch range. The trowels that you're going to find are actually, this is from the tip of the trowel to the top of the spade. That is 6 inches right there. So this is a great measuring tool you can use. So that's the first thing that we have. The other thing that we have is we have what we call a FOPO bag. So a FOPO bag stands for fear of packing out. And we recommend just packing out your toilet paper with you if you can. And we cover it with duct tape, because in that way you don't have to see what's inside of here, especially if it's something that, you are new to and you're not super comfortable with packing out your toilet paper. Maybe you don't want to see it, or if you're with friends, you don't want them to see your dirty toilet paper. So this is a great way to conceal it. And you can also put other things in here as well.
Yeah, it's great for pads and tampons too, especially when you're camping as well.
Yeah. And so then the next thing that we have is our TP. So we always bring toilet paper with us, but there's a lot of, you can check out your area, see what kind of natural toilet papers there are in the area as well. But you just want to
If
make
you're
sure,
in a pinch.
yeah, if you're in a pinch, you don't have it. But just make sure anything that you are using to wipe, make sure that you're also depositing that into your 6 to 8 inch cat hole and burying that. And then when you're burying it, make sure that your trowel never touches your poop, because you want to put this back in your backpack and you don't want to contaminate your snacks or your clothes or anything like that.
He's saying if you use anything that's a natural toilet paper, but again, toilet paper, we recommend you use that FOFO bag to pack it up. Yeah.
So then the next thing we have is hand sanitizer. So this is just, you know, we all know how hand sanitizer works. This is something great to have just so that we're,
especially right now,
but making sure that we're,
always
staying clean and that we're not, so that especially if it's a multi-day trip too, we're not going to get sick. We're not going to get our friends sick as well. And then the last thing that we have inside of our bag is a wag bag. So in some places, you're going to find that you're not going to be able to dig a cat hole, whether it's because regulations don't allow it there, or maybe there's not the right conditions for it. Say maybe it's all rock and you can't dig down, or maybe it's really sandy and there's not that those beneficial microbes to help break it down. So we always have this in our backpack just in case, because you never know. And what this is, you can open it up, and inside there's going to be a powder that will help gel anything that you put into there, so that when you go and seal it back up, you can put it in your backpack. You're not going to have anything sloshing around. And it's also, what's really cool about that is then it starts breaking it down as well, and it makes it it's not a biohazard. So when you get off the trail and you get home, you can actually throw this into your regular garbage. Now we recommend, unless it's something that you it's an emergency where you need to use this, we always recommend, if you can, digging a cat hole, because this is, a single-use item. This is plastic, so this is something that we'd be contributing into our landfill. And so anytime that we can try to minimize the amount of stuff we're putting in our landfill, we try to go ahead and do that. So so just make sure, and that all goes back to planning ahead and preparing, making sure what is going to be the best option in the situation that I'm in.
And for peeing, we also recommend going 200 feet or about 70 big steps away from water trails and camp. And for that, you don't have to dig a cat hole, but just being really conscious about what surface you're peeing on. Rock or an area that doesn't have any vegetation is best, because some animals will be attracted to the salts in your urine and they will actually dig plants up. So just being really conscious, growing up, we were always taught to go pee in the bushes, but that actually might not be the best place to go. So being really conscious of what surface it is that you're peeing on, and that it's not just right in front of everybody, because that's for both parties involved.
Do we have are there any specific tips for people that have a vagina or female identifying people? Urinating outside might be a little bit more difficult, especially with AIM and things like that. So if you people that have vaginas have any way in on that, please.
Yeah. I might even go even farther than 200 feet sometimes, just because depending on the area that I'm in a forest, it's likely that you can find a space that you feel comfortable in. But also being really conscious about pulling your pants down far enough and getting a good enough squat in so you're not peeing on your feet is really important for sanitary reasons too. But a really great thing to have with you is a Kula cloth, and that is actually, you can look them up. We should link them as well, but maybe we can do that in a second. But sorry, we didn't think to send you that link. But Kula cloth, if you haven't heard of them, are this really amazing company that they make squares of fabric that actually have antimicrobial properties within them. So you can use it to wipe and reuse it. So you can hang it on your backpack to dry, and then the sun can actually kill any bacteria that's left on there. And that can be a really great way to minimize the amount of TP that you're having to pack out. Another really important thing to talk about is periods outdoors. There is this myth that animals or bears or anything scary might be attracted to you while you're out while you have your period. There is absolutely no evidence, no research that supports that. So it's really important. I mean, when I was younger, going on my first backpacking trip, I had heard that, and I was scared. So it's really important to bust that myth and spread there's nothing, no research that supports that there's anyone that's gonna be more attracted to you because of your period while you're in the outdoors. So you can actually, if you do use a Diva cup, you can pour the blood into the cat hole that you dig. That's what we recommend. And then making sure that you clean it properly with distilled water, like your filtered water bottle water. And again, always packing out pads and tampons. Don't bury those in your cat holes. So, oh my goodness, there's a little hummingbird that's flying right up to our window.
Oh, you're so lucky.
But that is for me in a nutshell. I think that covers it. But let me know if I'm there. You have any more questions? Or
No, that was pretty
No,
good.
I would like to kind of like stem off of that as well. A lot of what we are seeing, I didn't like mention every single thing because I could have probably went on for about 20 minutes about just like what we're seeing on the state forest right now. I know we're limited on time, so I'm trying to keep it a little compressed there. But a lot of what we are seeing right now, as well as those toilet paper trails, because again, people are going out into the state forest. They don't realize that we don't have the modern amenities like some other places that they might be more familiar with or more comfortable with. So they're relying on using the outdoors for their bathroom, which we are fine with, but do it responsibly. Again, we do have different like rules and regulations that do exist within our state forest that just simply are there to try to guide people on best uses for the outdoors. So if you do have to go to the bathroom, whether it's number 1 or number 2, we really would prefer if it's at least 100 feet away. I know that that differs a little bit from leave no trace principles. On our state forest, we want at least 100 feet away from a water source. And that rule can be applied pretty much to the same as away from a parking lot, away from a trail, kind of like what I said a little bit earlier on. So if you do have to go number 1 and you're not opposed to carrying out your paper, that would be great because a lot of the paper we see, it doesn't really have anything on it. It's not really soiled. So, you know, unfortunately, we get a close-up glimpse of that sometimes. So carrying a Ziploc bag, which I do when I'm in the outdoors. And like Monika and David said, having some sort of opaque barrier on the outside so you don't have to look in is excellent and will get you over your fear of carrying out that paper because we as humans, we're so disconnected from our own waste and where stuff goes after we go to the bathroom that it can be a little intimidating to get into the idea of packing out everything, but that can include your toilet paper. So we do really, you know, emphasize that I personally, not our organization, but I personally emphasize that that's a great idea. But if you do have to go number 2, you know, cat holes are a great option, especially if you're on a multi-day trip and you're out on the state forest and obviously there's no restroom facilities. So digging a cat hole at least 6 inches deep, again, keep maximizing that distance from water sources, from trails, from other resources is really important to keep in mind. And, you know, that might be paper you might not necessarily want to carry out. We just ask that you bury that with it. It will decompose eventually. It'll take a bit longer, but, you know, that is okay by us as well. Another thing that we've been seeing a lot of lately are the dog poop bags. So, you know, carrying out your pet's waste is really important as well. And obviously, that's not going to be applicable to all scenarios when you are visiting a state park or state forest, especially if you're doing a multi-day backpacking trip. You don't want to have 20 dog poop bags. It's just not very reasonable necessarily. So something that I usually advise for people, again, this isn't necessarily an organization role, but this is something that if people ask me, I say, hey, this is what I would recommend that you do. A cat hole, again, following those same guidelines for human waste disposal, the 6 inches deep, digging it with a trowel, a stick, any sharp object that you can get your hands on, at least 100 feet away from a water source, and burying your dog's waste is the best. So that might require you to actually move the waste. So you getting a nice long stick or some bark to carry it far from an area where there's going to be a lot of visitation and visitors using. Sorry, my dog's barking in the background. is really important to keep in mind. So that's just another thing we've been seeing. People go to the trouble of bagging up the dog poop, leave it on the side of the trail to trailhead because they didn't want to carry it with them on their day hike and they forgot about it. Understandable, but it's better in most instances to just carry that waste, dig a cat hole and bury it than leaving these plastic bags sitting there because then that becomes someone else's problem. and it is an eyesore for other visitors. So I just ask that people be, mindful of that as well and think of other ways that they can, eliminate that waste problem with their pets while recreating outdoors.
Yeah.
What about food and snacks? What sort of guidelines do you have for people bringing their own food in, and how should they take it out? There you go.
Is this for me?
Yeah, anyone who wants to.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so I know that the Leave No Trace principles, for the most part, mention that you should try to carry out everything that you can, because depending on where you are in the country, rate of decomposition can be a little different. So if you were to throw out a banana peel or an apple core out in a really arid climate, like in the southwestern part of the United States, not Pennsylvania, but thinking about Arizona, Utah, it's going to take probably a good bit of time for that product to decompose. Whereas in Pennsylvania, we have higher humidity and just the conditions that allow for higher rates of decomposition. So for us, I still recommend that people, me personally, this isn't necessarily an organization standard, but I do ask that people, and I do try to mirror this example to people when I am guiding people on backpacking trips and different educational experiences, to carry out everything with you, whether it's an apple core, orange peels. That's a big thing that we see everywhere. Banana peels. I do it, and I hope that other people see me doing that. And if people ask me, I just ask that they do designate a Ziploc bag or another disposable bag for their waste. Just because my example I use is, what if everyone that came to visit this spot disposed of an apple core just like you did in this spot? How many apple cores would there be within, a week, 2 weeks, a month, 3 months? And again, that would not necessarily be considerate for other visitors.
Yeah, that's a common misconception, is that biodegradable waste can be left in the outdoors. And that's a really great visual to give people. Another thing to talk about is the fact that if it's even a natural thing that would grow in that ecosystem, because when we leave banana peels, orange peels, apple cores behind, if that's not something that naturally grows there, if any animals within that area, wild animals, are attracted to that, if they eat that, that can make them sick if it's not a natural part of their diet. And it can take 2 to 5 years to decompose on average, or even more. As you were saying, decomposition rates definitely vary. But yeah, that's something that we talk about with people all the time. It's so really thinking about, so think about if you were in an apple orchard and the apples are falling down on the ground and they're decomposing there anyway. Maybe that would be a time where if you eat an apple underneath the tree and you leave the apple core there, it's a part of the ecosystem. But more often than not, we're not leaving behind things that are directly growing in that area. I did want to touch back on the dog poop bags just a little bit. So we do recommend, definitely as much as possible, packing those out. Another thing that you can do is make a little dog poop bag carrier for your dog that can attach to their leash. We actually had a little DIY session on our Instagram TV a couple weeks back. So definitely check that out. It's kind of like a faux bag, but a version for your dog, so your dog's packing out their own waste. And if you are we don't generally recommend burying your animal's waste as the first go-to. If you do, definitely don't bury it within, even if it's a biodegradable bag. Those do need industrial composting facilities to break down, and even then they do take years even if they're the bio bags that are the biodegradable ones. So being really conscious about those choices along that spectrum of minimizing our impacts. But yeah, I mean, great tips all around.
Great. Now let's talk a little bit about recreating during the time of COVID-19, like we are now. We have some information from Leave No Trace if people want to see what their stance is on getting outside. But how should we be interacting with others under the Leave No Trace guide during this COVID-19 time? So is there like a weird hybrid of suggestions you guys have?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And we actually, so as we said, we all of the education that we provide is based in research. So we've actually been partnering with Penn State, one of our longtime partners, to conduct research based on how people are interacting with these public spaces differently within the outdoors to help guide us in how we can best create recommendations moving forward. I mean, it definitely is everything that we've already been covering, but yeah, just maybe even more so, just really being prepared, planning as much as possible, knowing before you go, researching about that area, and expecting closures, being prepared to pack out your trash, being prepared to go to the bathroom, like we said, and really being ready to practice physical distancing. We can still wave at each other, we can still smile, we can still be kind and communicate, hey, I'm gonna go over here, and but really being conscious about the time that we're in. We've seen a lot of people not wearing masks, and that is something, you know, really going by what the CDC recommends, what the World Health Organization is recommending, and playing it safe, stay close to home. So instead of those really high risk activities such as snowboarding or skiing or just different activities that can really be more dangerous, not saying don't do them, but just being really conscious about the risk level that you're reaching when you're out recreating, if it's in the forest, if you have mountain biking trails, if you're new, just being really conscious about taking that time to ease into things and try things out, but at your level, and not pushing yourself at this time, to ensure that we're not overwhelming, you know, medical facilities even more than they're already overwhelmed. Just really being safe and staying close to home. And sorry, do you have anything to add? Yeah, and just don't forget the 7 principles. Really go back, learn. They've never been more important than they are right now. They've always been important, but especially in this time of COVID, making sure that we're prepared and that we know how to take care of these outdoor spaces and how to minimize our impacts as much as possible.
Yeah, and I'd like to kind of continue off of that. You know, with COVID, again, I mentioned at the beginning of this chat that we are seeing unprecedented numbers of visitation. Back, I believe it was in like 2014, we did a Penn State study of visitor use on our state forest land that basically told us like average numbers during specific time frames. And comparing what we are actually visually seeing right now is something that most of our staff that has been around much longer than I have for decades and decades has never seen visitation quite this high. So in general, weekends are extremely busy. You know, people are maybe teleworking, or they're working from home during the week, or, you know, going out and acclimating to being back in the office. So weekends, again, are the free time for people to get out. And a lot of what our staff is seeing is parking lots completely full, which, you know, is unprecedented. We normally wouldn't see our resources being exhausted like this. We're seeing pull-offs completely full anywhere where there might be a natural feature, some sort of highlight, even areas that are just like, it's just some random pull-off in the state forest, completely full. And to that point, we're seeing cars parked off of the side of the road in areas where, you know, they necessarily shouldn't be, because they're trying to all go to the same area. All these visitors want to see the same thing. So that can pretty much touch on a lot of leave no trace principles, especially that planning ahead and preparing that we keep emphasizing. So important, especially during these times that can be a little confusing, a little scary. Just knowing that when you arrive to a place and you had a plan in your head, like, I'm going to go hike this trail. If the parking lot is completely full, don't go. It's not worth it. If the parking lot is that full, you are likely going to end up seeing a lot of people along a trail, especially if it's a shorter trail. Now, some areas might have spur trails that go off of it where you might not actually run into too many people, but just be overly cautious. We really want to let people know that although we are in the green, things haven't really changed for how we're doing things. We still are highly encouraging social distancing, and that includes out on the trails, especially when it does come to leave no trace, because we don't want to create wider treads of trails. We don't want to create companion trails that, you know, lead people to different areas of an area of state forest where we maybe don't want people going, or trampling on vegetation that's maybe, threatened or rare. So just be mindful when you do go in the outdoors that things are changing and they're changing quickly, and it's oftentimes out of our control. So just be adaptable, and just go in with an open mind that, hey, an area might be crowded and it might not be a good idea for me to go there. Let me check out my map and look for another trail to go to. So just, again, being able to change plans last minute is important. But of course, if you do that, let someone still know where you're going.
Absolutely, absolutely. So as Rachael, as an environmental educator, and Monika and David as Leave No Trace educators, how do you suggest someone approach a stranger that might not be practicing Leave No Trace principles? How can people advocate to follow these practices when they're out and about for others who might not be?
Yeah, I can take this real quick. It'll be a nice, short, and sweet answer. So, I think that approaching the topic from a very neutral, very friendly standpoint is very important. Right now might be a little challenging because I feel that a lot of people are uncertain of what's happening, and being approached by someone in close proximity might be a little intimidating, especially with COVID. I think just being mindful of personal space is really important for approaching the topic. And, if someone's intentionally doing something that's like really, really bad, maybe wait and contact our office and let us know, like if someone's vandalizing an area with spray paint, and might not be something that you necessarily want to get involved with. But if someone, throws something outside of their car or litters or something, just say like, hey, there aren't any trash can facilities available. We want to make sure that this place is nice for other visitors. Make it a teachable moment, but don't come across as being, condescending or aggressive, but coming up with a way. And I think that every situation is going to be a little bit different. And some situations might just not be the best to get yourself involved with, and that's whenever our staff should be contacted, especially if it is something where the person might be getting a little combative. You don't really need to get yourself involved with that, but if you're out and this person seems like friendly and reasonable to communicate with, and you're able to share some knowledge with them, I think that teachable moments are so important. And oftentimes I find that people just don't know, or they just don't have any background or knowledge, and they've never been taught that. So I think that most people, again, don't necessarily have bad intentions with some of the slight Leave No Trace things that they are missing while they are recreating. I think that it's just they haven't had that exposure. Again, we're dealing with a lot of people who are novices. Again, not making excuses, but I just think that sometimes those manners are just lacking. So I think that creating those opportunities that are very friendly, very light, to just share with people, this is kind of how you should do things while you're in the outdoors, is really important. And I think that anyone can do that. You don't have to be necessarily a Leave No Trace trainer, an educator, just anyone who just wants to try to, get people and make sure that everyone can enjoy the outdoors.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to add on to what Rachael said about people maybe not necessarily knowing, what the right thing is. Most people that are venturing outdoors want to do the right thing. We all want to do the right thing, but maybe may not understand those natural processes when we're out there. And what our research has shown is that people are 5 times more likely to change their behavior if they know the reasons for why they shouldn't be doing that. So if you are leaving your orange peel in a place, if they know, just that simple reasoning, even if it's not something that's going to change right then, if you went up to somebody and said, hey, and explain the reason behind, they still might be skeptical in that moment. But over the course of time, they are going to be 5 times more likely than if they didn't know the reason at all. If they just thought it was some kind of rule that didn't make sense to them. And so having those reasoning behind it.
And again, being really kind, giving people the benefit of the doubt, exactly like you were saying, Rachel, taking the time to not say, hey, that's against the rules, or wag your finger. That's never what it's about. That doesn't create long-term change. And that's what we're here for, is for long-term change. So taking the time to give people the benefit of the doubt, be really kind, and explain to them the natural functioning of that ecosystem as well. So, oh, hey, I saw that there is an orange peel on the ground. Did you know that these actually take 2 years to decompose in this ecosystem? And when these little critters eat them, that it can actually make them sick. So really taking the time to think about, and of course, there's more before that. What we're talking about right now is something called the authority of the resource technique. And so taking that time to build a rapport before you get to that example statement that I just said. So taking the time to get to know people, be kind, and talk to them. And I think it's really important what you were saying, Rachel, about recognizing the time that we're in, about how people might not be as approachable right now. I know we're in a pretty rural place where we're living currently. Normally we live full time on the road, but we're safe at home right now. And so sometimes there's a few days that go by before we see another person. So that's very different for us right now. And so we're engaging with people in different ways too. So having that awareness, I think, is really important that you said that, and I appreciate. But yeah, again, that's everything that Leave No Trace is about, is just being kind, giving people the benefit of the doubt. We're not about rules. We're about helping spread awareness and education. So really just taking that time to talk to each other and help each other, because there's all different ways. I'm sure there's all different things that we all do personally that where we're making more of an impact than we realize, where we could learn. I learn new things every day about what I could be doing better. So we're all on a spectrum, and so it's just all about learning and growing together. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think that another great opportunity is just setting that example too. Being a model to others is extremely important, especially when you are in a position where you can affect change. So as an educator, if I were to throw out a peel or an apple core or something like that, that wouldn't necessarily be setting the best example. So I think that, the three of us, Monika, David, myself, we're all in a really great position to cause change by just simply modeling good behavior in the outdoors.
100%.
Absolutely. Now, there is so much we can discuss about the Leave No Trace principles and how to behave in certain situations, but our time is coming to an end. So I wanted to make sure that if there's any other information you wanted to share with our viewers today, that you had the time to do it. So Rachael, Monika, David, anything you'd like to share before we wrap up?
Yeah, sure. I'll just chime in here real quick. So obviously things have been greatly modified with how we're able to do things due to COVID right now, but things will be transitioning, and we're figuring out ways to modify different activities and not necessarily go back to the way that things used to be. There's really not a normal for us currently. But as far as the vandalism that we have experienced on state forest land, I didn't really dive too deep into that, but it has been pretty serious for us. We have a few areas that are normally targeted. Unfortunately, they're very accessible spots. They're known by the local communities as maybe the party spots or areas where a lot of people like to go, again, due to accessibility. And as a specific area that I have in mind is Beam Rocks. For those of you that have been to southwestern Pennsylvania Forbes State Forest, pretty much everybody knows Beam Rocks on Forbes. And a few weeks back, it was actually targeted again. It's an area where we have received a lot of vandalism in the past with graffiti. And unfortunately, it was tagged pretty badly to the point where all the work that volunteers, as well as our maintenance staff and myself, put into cleaning that area up every year is going to take a lot of work. So, that's a question we've been getting a lot of: when are we going to be able to have this opportunity? Volunteers want to come out, they want to give back, they're outraged by this, they have a sense of place, a love for this natural area, and they want to know how they can give back to us. Right now, due to COVID, we're still trying to follow, our governor's guidelines. We're still trying to follow and figure out our own guidelines of best practices for us to assure our safety and volunteer safety. So I want to let people know, We are in the process of formulating a general outline of how we're going to go about dismantling this graffiti, so to speak, cleaning up this graffiti. So if you are interested in, any sort of volunteer opportunities, especially with removing some of the vandalism, not only on Forbes, I know other state forests and state parks have received a lot of that recently as well, just due to the high influx of visitation. Keep your eyes peeled for out to social media. A lot of places are posting on there about these incidences that are occurring, as well as opportunities to give back to those local communities, to come out to our public lands and help to clean them up, conserve them, and make them better for other visitors. So that is something that we are currently working on figuring out. So I appreciate everyone's patience for that. And just know that these opportunities will be coming up within the next couple of weeks and months. But again, they will be modified to assure proper social distancing and the safety and health of everybody involved. So, it's something that a lot of people can take for granted too, are these natural places that exist. And unfortunately, sometimes they're taken advantage of and they are damaged. So we're doing our best right now to try to repair some of that damage and hopefully, be able to find out who is causing these issues and correct that as well. But all in all, volunteer opportunities will be coming up soon, so stay tuned.
Absolutely. I just want to add, folks in Pennsylvania that are watching, feel free to send a direct message to the Parks and Forest Foundation with your email, and we can add you to our volunteer lists to get updates on volunteer opportunities happening all across the state, and even connect you with Forbes if that's your home forest. So, Monika and David, anything else from you two before we wrap?
Yeah, we just encourage you to definitely research more. Again, going back to planning ahead and preparing, go to our website, learn about the principles, learn about what we do. There's volunteer opportunities there as well. And look at our, so that link takes you to all of our different links. So check out our YouTube. We have a plethora of educational videos. If there's anything that you're unsure about before you're heading out on your next hike, on your next trip, and we even down to the Kula cloth that we were talking about. There's a video about that. So taking the time to really learn and educate yourself before you go. We also have Facebook and Instagram, and we do Facebook Lives every Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern right now. And so Instagram Lives. Sorry, what is Facebook, yeah, Instagram Lives, but we also are on Facebook. So just definitely follow us. We have lots of different information coming out. We also encourage you, if you do go to lnt.org, that first initial page will give you our recommendations for getting outside during COVID-19, including all of that research that we were talking about. We definitely encourage you to look us up and to learn more. So thank you for having us.
Real quick, if I can interject. So I don't have a link for you guys right now because I'm a little not tech savvy. So I feel like my video will go away if I click on a tab to give you a link. If you do want to find updated information about COVID-19 information and what that means for recreating on state forest or state park land, DCNR's website has an updated page. If you just type in dcnr.pa.gov, or if you just go onto Google or any other internet search engine, you just type in DCNR, it'll take you right to the first option you should get in your search results is the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources page. Click on that, just scroll down halfway, 3/4 of the way down through the page, and you'll actually see a highlight news section. It has all the up-to-date posts about the different phases, the different color phases that are states in, which everyone is moving in a more of a reopening phase currently. So you can see what exactly that means. And there's a really awesome interactive map that is super user-friendly that you can just easily scroll down. You click on a little tab and you can select based off of the county that you want to visit. So for Forbes, a lot of our state forest is in Westmoreland County. So you might want to see, okay, well, a Forbes State Forest District office is in Westmoreland County. So what does that mean? What facilities are available to me right now? So you click on the tab, you can scroll down to Forbes, it'll tell you our area is open, our restrooms open, is the office open, and it gives you contact information. it's a really great way to, again, plan ahead and prepare and just be able to more easily navigate these kind of key times where there's a lot of things changing constantly. So just make sure to stay up to date with that. And we're doing our very best on our end to maintain our Facebook page. So it's a Forbes State Forest page. It's a community government page. And we do update it about weekly with some of the new rules and regs and kind of just giving people an idea of what's going on. Again, because things are changing pretty rapidly. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us.
Thank you. Now, if you have the time, I wouldn't mind one more time going over those 7 principles here to end with the hand motion. So Monica and David, if you wouldn't mind leading us one more time so we can just review that for the viewers.
We would love to. For those of y'all at home, feel free to go ahead and do it with us. Get loud, get weird. We can't see you or hear you, so you can get as loud and weird as you want. All right, y'all ready to do it with us?
We're ready.
Okay.
1, plan ahead and prepare. 2, travel and camp on durable surfaces. 3, dispose of waste properly. 4, leave what you find. 5, minimize campfire impacts. 6, respect wildlife. And 7, be considerate of other visitors.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you all so much for being here today and sharing your expertise with us. This was a great conversation.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks, Monica and David. It was nice meeting you.
It was nice meeting you all. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.